All right, welcome to episode number 83 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We are recording September the 6th, 2020. My name's Eric. I'm the host of the show based in Southern Ontario. I'm a hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, and computer geek. As a first responder, I witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events, and I started a small preparedness company to help people get prepared for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
I'm Alan. I'm a safety trainer, first responder, security expert, also a ham radio operator, and overall safety nerd.
Hughes.
I'm Hughes from Nova Scotia. I'm a Canadian Armed Forces veteran, volunteer firefighter and station chief, also a volunteer search and rescue technician and prepper. And I've been preaching and living the prepper lifestyle to varying degrees for the last 6 years or so.
My name is Andrew. I'm a recovering libertarian, a firearms instructor at Ragnarok Tactical, and you can normally find me complaining about the government on Canadian Patriot Podcast.
All right, if you want to help support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air, you can buy a Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt at prepperpodcast.ca. You can also visit prepperpodcast.ca/support to see our Amazon products that we recommend, or sign up, become a Patreon. All proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
If you are enjoying the show, please take a few moments and like us on Facebook, submit a review on iTunes. We also want your feedback, good, bad, indifferent, or even if there's just a topic you want us to cover. You can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
So we've got some decrypting content for you in this episode. We're going to start off with some preparedness-related news. Next, we'll let you know what we've done for our preparedness since the last episode. Then we're going to get into the main topic, protection from cyber attack. Let's move into some news.
Not a lot of detail on this particular one. The article that I put in the notes for tonight, quadruple murder suicide apparently in Oshawa. Sounds like somebody showed up that wasn't welcome, and now a whole bunch of people are dead. Keep your friends closer, enemies closer, and what's the old saying? Be polite, be professional, have a plan to kill everyone you meet. Something like that.
Yeah. Jeez. So we seem to have lost Hughes, so we'll move on. I've got a couple of news articles here. Oh, he's come back. So I've got a couple of news articles, a couple in regards to CRA. So if you've been paying attention to the news last couple of weeks, they were hacked. So a lot of people have found their accounts were shut down. Some perpetrators were able to fraudulently acquire about 9,000 of the 12 million GC key accounts, and then separately also attack the CRA system by using credential stuffing attacks. So those who aren't familiar with credential stuffing, they will take usernames and passwords obtained from previous hacks and use them in an attempt to gain access to other accounts. So CRA was shut down for a little bit. Apparently they're back up and online again, and they've secured things. We'll see how long that lasts before they're hacked again. It seems to be a thing.
It's almost as if a central depository of all of our really valuable information is a bad idea.
Weird, right? And I had another article here. So COVID-19 scammers are changing tactics as the pandemic stretches on. They're offering Canadian targets help with previous pandemic data breaches. So they're offering to help you clean up a breach from previous, but really they're just looking to gain your information again.
Well, that's swell.
Yeah, that's nice of them. But at least they're getting crafty with it. But I don't know. The CRA calls me a couple days and tells me that I'm wanted. I'm still here.
I genuinely appreciate that they're actually putting some effort into it. That makes me happy.
Yeah, I like pressing one and chatting with them for a while, and then they get really mad and call me a few names, and then they hang up. It's a good time. I feel like I've wasted their time when they haven't been able to scam someone else for that 10 minutes I've been tying them up.
I like that. That's a good theory anyways.
Yeah.
What
else we got? Is that for news articles? Where'd McKay go?
I've got a news article here. If Hughes isn't back. Customer complains about delays after ransomware attack on delivery company Canpar Express. Canpar Express is, of course, a subsidiary of Canpar. They are a courier service, and last week, the week of the 21st, they temporarily suspended some of their operations because they couldn't sort packages.
It's a bit of an issue.
It does make it hard to be a courier company when you can't put the boxes onto trucks.
No, Yeah, it's kind of an important part of the process.
So they were down for, I think they were down for about 2 or 3 days, but it impacted pretty well all of Eastern Canada. Like anything east of Ontario got affected.
The question is, did they pay the ransom or did they have backups?
For reasons that I can't discuss, I understand that the systems were rebuilt. They were not restored from backups, but they were rebuilt.
Excellent. Good to hear they at least had some good systems in place. It took a couple days to get it back, but
they knew who to call eventually.
Fair enough.
Was it Ghostbusters?
If
it's not Ghostbusters, I'm really not interested.
Yeah.
Yes, for legal reasons, it was definitely Ghostbusters.
Excellent. Slimer can fix ransomware for sure.
Why not?
Yeah. All right, Hughes, you able to
I did. I'm back. Yeah, we were talking about spotty internet before the show, and sure enough, so peak of hurricane season is this week. So typically September 10th is kind of the mean in the season, and I guess there's 2 tropical depressions that are currently forming in the Atlantic. This obviously affects people along the eastern seaboard of the United States as well as the Canadian Atlantic provinces. So that's one of the things that got me into preparedness, because we kept getting hit with small hurricane and tropical storms and all that kind of stuff. So it's good to know that we're halfway through, but we're only halfway through the battle as well. So just something to keep an eye on for all the folks on the East Coast.
Good to know.
I mean, Florida really should be doing its part to flatten the curve. Didn't they like try and shoot at some hurricanes at one point to dissipate them?
I think that was Texas.
Right. I think they were shooting at tornadoes in order to try to stop them.
Yeah. So I mean that's flatten the curve, right? If we're at the peak, then we should be on the right side of that now. Anyways, I think that's all the sarcasm I can muster for the news for today.
All right. Well, then let's move into what we've done lately for preps. So for myself, I ripped out all the drywall and the little built out that was around our sump pit area. Battled with a whole bunch of mold that I found in behind the drywall and the vapor barrier. So that was a ton of fun. But now ready for the professionals to come in and put the new pump system in. Some jobs are just better left to the professionals. As much fun as it would be to get a jackhammer in and start ripping up a floor and such. I figured I'd just bring in the pros to do it. So it's ready to go. And I started exploring our own little backyard here. So we're finding all kinds of different hiking trails and little areas to explore that never really knew were here before. And they're all within 5 or 10 minutes of the house. So we're trying to make a point to find somewhere new or something new in and around the area each day and start exploring instead of traveling 20 minutes, half hour away. We're looking at what's actually basically within walking distance. So it's been fun. It's been about a week or 2 of doing that. And finding all kinds of neat little spots I had no idea existed.
That is a good time.
Yeah.
I discovered a fairly significant drainage issue with my own sump pumps, which resulted in me digging a big hole in my yard to make a weeping pit. That was Friday, and I still can't lift my arms over my shoulders. So essentially, we've got my yard is all clay. So it's not only is it clay, but it was wet clay, which was exceptionally heavy and very difficult to move around. But now I got a big hole that has a lot of gravel and lots of places for it to go. Now I'm planning to do the same thing in the front yard, which is going to get me an excuse to rent a mini X and have some fun digging. Also started training in jiu-jitsu this week after a year of talking about it. So we're going to get, funny enough, I have a hard time finding people to spar with. They don't want to take on the giant, but we'll get there eventually. But it's been a ton of fun and a great learning experience. It's something that's been recommended to me over and over again, and I will highly recommend it to everybody around me now.
Nice. So, but Hughes, anything on the list? Oh, sorry, Andrew. Go ahead,
Hughes.
Sure, yeah. So
most Canadian standoff ever.
I haven't been able to do a lot in terms of preps. Just kind of trying to get the most out of summer squeezed in before the kids start back in school on Tuesday. But I've been readying some supplies to winterize the RV, which is going to be happening in a few weeks, as well as getting ready for duck and deer hunting season, which is going to be starting in a couple weeks here. So, and then after that, I'll kind of dive into the climate-specific preps as far as getting ready for winter. So stay tuned for that. But that's all I have for this week.
All right, try her again, Andrew.
All right. I've been doing a whole bunch of shooting of late. I'm putting on a monthly partisan rifle contest at my local gun club at Guelph Rod and Gun. And I'm also putting on a monthly service pistol match at Guelph Rod and Gun. And we have lots of people coming out and obeying the various COVID-related social distancing policies and shooting rather well. And I'm tending to turn up in the top couple of shooters. It helps that I wrote the rule book, I imagine.
That would help. Yep.
But yeah, doing well with that. We got lots of people coming out. We got lots of people bringing out lots of different, not yet prohibited rifles, enjoying themselves and shooting bullseye targets. And lately, I've turned to making beer. That was my adventure today. I made 2 3-gallon batches. I did a Hefeweizen and a milk chocolate stout that both look lovely in their carboys, and I can see the little yeasties doing their thing and making alcohol.
The pictures you sent did look good.
Just another 3 weeks until I can move on to the next step.
That would be the worst part.
The waiting has to be the worst part.
The waiting. And it's not even 3 weeks until I can drink it. It's literally 3 weeks until I can go to the next step in the fermentation process. So I'm probably 5 or 6 weeks away from beer, but that's okay.
Well, I trust you have some in reserve.
Little bit. I stopped by one of the local microbreweries and picked up a Labor Day sale that they were doing, because it's important to fuel yourself while you're making the beer.
Well, I think it's a requirement. Like you don't shop on an empty stomach and you don't make beer when you're sober, right?
Yeah. That sounds fair.
I mean, this is true.
Yeah.
Works for me. I usually split my time between reloading in the garage and making beer, because most of making beer is actually just drinking and watching water boil. So I usually turn my back on it and stand in front of the reloading press for a bit.
That works.
Sure. I actually cleaned out our local CCI distributor this week. I said I will take all of the small pistol primers that you have. And it turns out that I could drive away with that many. I mean, barely, but I could drive away with that many, so.
Perfect.
Yeah. Sorry to everybody else that wanted small pistol primers. You're all out of luck.
You snooze, you lose.
Don't be sorry for being right.
All right, well, let's move into the main topic of the show. So we're talking about cybersecurity, cyber attack. Normally in the preparedness community, it's always talk about, growing your vegetable garden, growing your herbs, protecting your home, all that kind of stuff. You don't hear a lot about preparing or preventing cyber attack. And really, it's been a thing since the internet, obviously. But it really hasn't been a big mainstream thing in the media, except for, I'd say, within the last 5-10 years, where people are using it more and more. More personal information is coming onto the internet. So people are obviously more concerned about it. And the target has kind of shifted from big, huge corporations with lots of data to sometimes a smaller guy, because you have all your information, and chances are you don't have all the big security budget or thought or mindset as a big corporation would have. So we thought we'd put an episode together and talk about it this evening, and kind of get some information out there to help everybody get a little bit better prepared, have their data a little bit more secured, and hopefully help prevent this from happening to you. Because we're all interconnected in today's society. Everybody, for the most part, has a cell phone, internet. Your ATM is all based on internet connection or connectivity now. Your paycheck is probably electronically deposited. Power grid, traffic lights, all of them are connected or somehow controlled by computer systems. Just to name a few things. So cyber attacks are happening all the time. I've put a couple of links in the show notes here that are some threat maps that'll show you active attacks that are happening. One is FireEye and one is threatmap.checkpoint.com. Again, they're in the show notes. You can check them out. It's a live interactive map that'll show you different various types of attacks that are happening in real time. Kind of neat to watch. And you can see them all happening within the US, within Canada, hopping over to China, hopping from China over to Canada, US. So it's something to kind of just watch, and you can put it up in your background if you want to look impressive at some point. And it makes for a great presentation if you're in the tech industry. So the idea of a personal cyber attack is usually far from most, like I said, in the prepper community. Mostly the concern lays with banks, power grid going down. But have you ever considered what would happen if, say, your email was hacked, your medical records, your bank account, your cell phone? your personal identification if it leaked.
I kind of hope my bank account gets hacked, and then the people that do it feel bad for me and help. That would be. I mean, if you're gonna attack anybody's bank account, mine is probably not the one to go after.
Yeah, that would be great if all of a sudden one day you logged into your online banking and there's a couple million in there.
It's just like an email from somebody that's like,
felt really bad for you.
We felt really bad for you. We were going to stake your money, but you obviously need it more than we do. So.
Yeah. So here you go. We hacked some other guy, and here's some of his money. That'd be great. I don't think that's
my current retirement plan. So all of you hackers out there, if you feel the need.
All right, good to know. We'll put your bank account number up in the end of the show here for anybody that wants it. So, like I said, most of your personal information is on electronics. Not having a plan to protect your personal information. You may even have your entire preparedness plan electronically stored. It's just doing your preps an injustice. If you're leaving everything out in the open and available, people are going to start looking into it, and they're going to start to want to glean that information and use it for most likely nefarious things, not putting thousands of dollars into your bank account. They're going to try and take it out. So just a couple of stats. Between 2010 and 2018, there were 10.11 incidents of ID theft per 100,000 residents in Canada. Between 2008 and 2019, there were over 9,600 reports of data breaches in the USA. I threw that in there because a lot of Canadians will use US-based services online. So the data breaches do also affect us here in Canada. The joys of the internet, everybody's interconnected, and borders tend to kind of disappear. November 1st of last year, businesses became subject to new mandatory breach reporting regulations under Canada's federal private sector privacy law. The Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act requires organizations to report when there's been significant data breaches and data leaks of information. So the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, between November 2018 and October 2019, reported 680 data breaches. So out of those reports, 147 were accidental disclosure. 82 of them were just simple loss. So the companies lost the hard drive with the data on it or lost the thumb drive. They don't know where it is. 54 were theft, but 397 were unauthorized access. So someone's gained access to that information without any sort of authorization whatsoever. So they've found a way into the system and taken the information. ID theft, something to think about. Everybody always thinks, yeah, okay, I'm an adult. My identification could potentially be stolen and used, take out mortgages, take out loans, pretend to be me and take out whatever kind of information they want as far as banking or gain some sort of service. But it is also actually popular to steal children's ID for identification theft. So make sure you have that little chat with your kids as well as far as what they're sharing on the internet. Because if they share enough, somebody can take over their identification as well and start running around and pretending to be them. And that's not good if all of a sudden there's mortgages in their names and such. So keep an eye out for that. That's someone with a question or no?
Are there safeguards, say, at banks? Maybe somebody knows the answer to this for like my kid's ID. Like, if somebody tries to use my son's social insurance number, he's 10. Is there any correlation between that number and a date of birth?
I don't believe there is with the SIN number.
Basically, no.
Could be wrong.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I know my kids.
Tied to your...
I know my 3 kids' SIN numbers, and they have nothing to do with one another. Like it's not like you can derive age from it. So I don't think that there would be.
So just keep that information super secure because it can be used for anything regardless of the age of your kids.
Yeah.
There we go.
And generally posting Instagrams of your social insurance number card is like frowned upon.
Yeah. No, my daughter just turned of an age where the internet is becoming more of a thing for her, and so she has a couple of social media accounts, and we have very, very strict guidelines about what goes there. There's an open phone policy, like you are not allowed to hide or delay discussions. So like if you have any messages, we have access to them, and for that exact reason, there's just too many people out there that might want to do bad things.
I'm sorry to hear that, Alan.
I mean, that's an offline discussion that I usually need a couple of beers to be able to talk about that now. So, yeah, especially with your kids, because it's not that they would do anything intentionally, but they don't know the harm that they can do with the information that they have.
Yeah, and they could very innocently be giving out an answer to the question that they don't realize is leading to more identification, and they might not even realize what that other person is asking for or what it could potentially lead to. So just
can we talk about that part for a moment? Because you see this all the time on the Book of Faces with the quiz about what's the last thing you ate and 10 other fun facts about you, like where did you grow up and what's your mother's maiden name and can I have your postal code? Because that would all be really, really helpful for me to open a credit card in your own name.
Yeah.
Or, I forgot my password and answer the following 3 recovery questions.
Yeah.
That's a classic social engineering attack, right?
Yep.
But so many people do those chain letter things on Facebook where it's like, well, answer these 20 questions. And it's like, okay, but like 5 of those are commonly used by banks as password recovery tools.
Yep.
So like stop posting the name of your beloved first dog on Facebook.
And the color of your first car and your mother's maiden name. Yep. It's and those are all things that are developed to look like a fun game. And you don't even think about it, and all of a sudden, I'm sure there's a few listeners now going, "Uh-oh, how do I delete that?"
Yeah, but how about stop using those as recovery questions too? I mean, right?
Yeah, anytime you have the option to write your own recovery question, you should do that.
Yeah, or have a system where you know that the question is going to be, "What was the color of your first car?" and then come up with a different answer, like the name of your favorite book or something. Right? Change it up.
The system doesn't care. The problem is being able to remember all that stuff, because if you write all of this down, particularly in a digital format, you're not really doing yourself any favors.
No.
And if you write it all on paper, you're probably still not doing yourself any favors, because when I break into your house and steal your notebook and it says, Chase bank account number and recovery questions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Physical security is also a thing.
Yes. Or if you're like me, you'll go looking for that book and you don't know where you put it.
You put it in a very safe place.
Yes. You don't
Probably
even remember
with
where
a passport. That's where mine would be. Related news. If you happen to see my passport, I've been looking for it.
Question to the panel. Two-part question. One, securing your phone, is it better to secure an iPhone or an Android, or is there an advantage to one over the other? And 2, if you are password locker apps actually secure in any way, or what's the best way to do that, to deal with that?
Well, let's start with the OS one, I think. The OS one is easy. Neither of them is a good option.
Nope.
How much do you trust Apple? How much do you trust Google?
Even less.
Right. So
which one of the two is the better option?
Well, yeah. So between them, which is the least bad? I guess is the best question. There's the real question.
I'm going to hesitate to argue in favor of Android being a more secure option, in that it can be vetted by third parties. But even then, every cellular carrier makes their own modifications to it, as do hardware manufacturers. So your Samsungs and your Huawei's and your phone hardware manufacturers implement their own subsystems, like additional software on top of the Android OS. So while Android itself is theoretically more secure than iOS, it's not really.
So maybe put it this way: if you're, I would look at the hardware too. I mean, if you're going to go Android, I would probably personally say stick with Google or Samsung. I wouldn't go Huawei, just because of the concerns that are around the Chinese giant that owns it. I did hear though from a lot of sources that iOS seems to be harder to get in, but that's just what I've heard. So
I will not professionally confirm nor deny that. However, yes, Android. Access to Android is, or can be, depending on the phone and the manufacturer and a whole myriad of things with the design of the device, can at times be easier to gain access to if you have physical access to the device versus an Apple phone, 6-digit PIN lock on it. Depending if your PIN code's 1 2 3 4 5 6, well.
And I think it's things too. If you look at like my Samsung device has an SD card. I have the ability to encrypt that SD card, but a lot of people don't do that. So even if somebody were to gain access to your phone and not have the ability to get into the phone, they can still have access to everything that's on the SD card, because more often than not, those SD cards are not encrypted, and they can contain a lot of information when it comes to pictures. Those pictures can contain geotags, so where they were taken. So that gives them information as to where you go, places you visited. It can contain all your downloads. Those downloads could be pay stubs, could be personal documents, could be anything, right? So that's definitely a concern when it comes to Android devices, because iOS doesn't have SD cards. Everything is built into the phone's memory, right? So
basically what it boils down to is if somebody gets physical access to your device and they have the ways and means to gain access to it, they are going to eventually get access. It's just a matter of
becomes
knowing
a time
how.
Problem.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Given enough time eventually. And I mean, that's true of your encrypted devices too, whether it's your SD card from your phone or your encrypted external hard drive that you carry in your briefcase. The encryption really depends. So if your passcode is 1234, my rainbow tables do not take long to execute 1234, because people that do this professionally just have all of the math already done in advance in things like rainbow tables, where I just have terabytes worth of pre-calculated hashes that I can run against a device to try and gain access. So as long as I don't have like a limited number of attempts, or as long as I can't bypass the limited number of attempts, or there's a lot of ways and means.
So tell me then, Andrew, I'm just going to jump to password managers for a second, because I use LastPass, for example, and I get LastPass to create all my passwords. And typically those are minimum 24 characters if I'm allowed to. So oftentimes websites will have a minimum of like 8 characters or 12 characters. I personally do a minimum of 24, and it's like, alphanumerical, capital, special characters. How good is your rainbow table at decrypting like a 24 character randomly generated password, for example?
Not going to be good. Rainbow tables are generally pre-calculated hashes based on dictionary attacks. So rather than me having to like run the dictionary, I can do like all of the lettering combinations before and after with common substitutions and things like 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and all of those. And it's all pre-calculated hashes that I can run against my target device or my target encryption. And there are different kinds of encryptions, but generally longer is better, as with most things.
Wow.
And variety is also good, as with most things. Yes. So if you're using the random generated password 24 character that like gobbledygook, like it's all letters and symbols, then it's going to be, it can be broken, but I mean, like a
really
SHA, like 24 characters SHA is going to take me like 400 years to try every combination, give or take. If I try one combination every 1/10 of a second. No, like I say, longer is better.
The weak point in your LastPass is the master password.
Right. And so, my master password is 36 characters, which sounds excessive, but it's something I remember. I can type fairly quickly.
What's the entire alphabet?
So I understand.
0 through 9. Like, that's really not that difficult.
It's the alphabet twice, guys. No, but I understand that that's the limitation. So, I have a 36 character password. I have 2FA set up for LastPass as well, which I know is not, 2FA doesn't mean that somebody can't get into it, but there's ways to make 2FA more secure than others. Like, don't use text messaging for your 2FA code, because somebody could clone your SIM card and get that text message, and so those things like that. But yeah, I think that the reason why I went with something like LastPass is because I knew that if I was using the same password for every site, even if it was complicated, if one of those sites was compromised and they had my email address, they had what Eric referred to as like a stuffing type of attack, I guess. Whereas, if I have 60 or 100 sites that I'm on, once they have my one password, they have every password. As it stands, if they have one password, that's it. They've only got that one password.
Well, and let's make that a good point. If you're going to have more than one service, you should have more than one password. Much like how if you have like a bank card, like an ATM card and a credit card, you probably don't want those to be the same PIN. You don't want your email and your electrical bill and your lab results and all of your various services online to be, super cool firefighter guy 1 2 3 4 because.
Can you not say my password, please?
Yeah.
Sorry. Apologies.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the kind of code an idiot has in his luggage.
Look at that.
So LastPass I think is good. KeyPass, one password. There's a bunch of those services. LastPass is good. I've done a bunch of testing with a bunch of these, and they are all pretty industry standard. But I mean, it is a weak spot in that if I can gain access to that, I can gain access to everything.
Yep.
Right. I mean, what I use with my LastPass is a YubiKey 2FA. So unless you get your hands on that YubiKey, then theoretically you shouldn't be able to access that password.
No, right? And two-factor authentication is definitely going to make things more secure for you. Two-factor, not that it can't be broken, but I mean, two-factor is generally going to make it a lot harder for me as an attacker to find a threat vector that I can use to have my way with your data. If I have physical access to your device, you're kind of boned. But as long as I don't physically have access, you're probably okay. Maybe there are some attacks, like if I spoofed a SIM card, I could maybe pick that up. Or if I had it and it was a code that went to your email and I had your device and I could see your email, I might be able to get that. Like, so there's definitely some two-factor stuff that's flawed, but if you're using a separate physical device, then I'm pretty much SOL unless I have the device.
Yeah, it's always nice to have that secondary device.
With LastPass too, is you can restrict mobile devices, meaning that a mobile device can't access your account unless you actually go in and authorize it. I've done so by MAC address. I've blocked access to countries and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's ways to secure products.
Yeah, and LastPass is really good for that because you can do the geofencing, you can do MAC isolation.
Yeah,
but
and I did that, and then I traveled to Singapore, and I forgot that I did that, and I had to VPN back into Canada in order to unrestrict myself. Yeah, so
So there are drawbacks to doing, but generally it's going to be more secure. But like anything else, when you travel, there are some steps you have to take,
and not forget and realize once you get there that you haven't taken them.
Yeah,
I think the other thing I want to bring up with the secure operating systems, because I mean my concern is as much non-state actors as it is a malicious third party. So the fact that Apple could in theory decrypt any iPhone they wanted to, I don't know how easy it is to compel Apple to do that, but I feel like it would be a lot harder to compel somebody like Google and Samsung to decrypt a device, because you have the potential for more people to be involved and it becomes more onerous on a let's call them an extra governmental agency.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's been reports of in the news of police agencies going to Apple and pleading with them to decrypt the device, and they basically said flat out no. I don't know how much truth there is to those. Right, I don't know how much
can't.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a difference between saying you can't do something and not actually being able to do it, and that's my as someone who works in software and computer stuff. Programmers are generally pretty lazy. There's usually ways to get into things, and they usually leave them open for themselves because they're lazy.
Yep. Well, that's my concern with Apple being a closed source operating system. I mean, I fully believe that Apple has the ability to decrypt these devices, but at the same time, when they receive a lawful access request or court order to decrypt the device and they're not doing so, it should give you some peace of mind, I guess. But at the same time,
I guess it just depends on if you trust Apple or the government more.
Yeah.
Who do you think has your best interest at heart?
Why are we still assuming those are two separate entities? Really,
right. So
and also because they're saying publicly that they're not doing it, does it mean that they're actually not doing it, or does it mean that they're just saying publicly that they're not doing it?
They'll tell you the encryption keys are generated on device, and they never actually see them. I question that as well. But
yeah, I don't know how much face I put into that. Yeah. The other thing, because phones are kind of a ubiquitous thing, there are actually other options aside from Android and iOS. I would look at a product called Lineage OS, also Replicant, which are open source, de-Googleified versions of Android. So they are more open source than Android is, in that they don't have third-party manufacturer or carrier software embedded in them. There's also Graphene, and there's a couple of other Linux-based OSs that you can load on Android hardware. Like Ubuntu Touch is Ubuntu is a very common Linux distribution. They have a version that runs on Android hardware, or some like certain Android handsets. So if you're super duper paranoid, like yours truly, you might want to look at something like Lineage, because then you can look at the source code if you feel super inclined, and you can sideload all your normal apps, and you can do like 95% of what you can do on your regular iPhone with no Google integration.
It's not spying on you.
Well, it's probably spying on you less.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because your carrier, your theoretical manufacturer could have like a low-level hardware attack, although the odds of them executing that against a specific target is very, very improbable. Not to say they couldn't do it, it's just highly unlikely. The cost would be very high. But you still have your carrier problem, and you still have all of your apps that could gather anything on your phone, because that's part of the other problem with this is, regardless of your operating system, whatever you put on the app, you know when you install something and Tinder's like, do you grant access to all of your photos and camera and microphone and you click the accept button because you want to swipe right on your next match? Yeah, because you just gave that app access to everything on your phone, like every photo, not just the photos you post on your dating profile, all of them.
Yeah, but I put that thing on Facebook that said that I do not give Facebook consent to reuse any of my information.
Here we go, Alan.
Well, I'm very glad you did that. It does not help you in the least.
So the whole
but it gives
thing
me something to laugh at in the morning.
When you use a free product, you are the product. So if you're using Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, I don't care what service it is. If you're not paying for it, you are the product.
Yep.
Well,
so
even if you are paying for it, Amazon is a great example of that. Hey, Alexa, can you play my favorite music? Oh, and you also are going to show me targeted ads, even though I'm already paying $100 and whatever a year for Prime?
Yep.
Yeah. So if it's free, I mean, yes, they're getting something from it, probably advertising dollars, maybe reselling your data to somebody that wants to buy it and sell you targeted stuff. But they might also just be using it for their own internal marketing purposes. But in some way, you are paying for this.
Right. And I was thinking in the worms of in the world of like security too. If you're using a free VPN, you're the product as opposed to paying for a VPN, right? So there's just those things to consider. And just while we're on the topic of operating systems, kind of switching over to desktop operating systems. Like I run mainly Kali Linux. I do have a Mac OS for my work as well as a Windows PC. So I run all of them, but primarily I'm running off Kali Linux. What are your thoughts on Mac OS, on Windows 10? I mean, I'm not going to talk about XP or anything like that, but what are your thoughts on like the more mainstream operating systems? Because most people probably haven't heard of Kali Linux or anything like that, right? So
Kali's a fork of Debian, isn't it?
Yep.
It is, yeah.
See, I know my Linux distros, but I work in a Windows shop now. I used to work in a Mac shop. I've used probably a dozen different Linux distributions over the years, and I still use a bunch to do very specific tasks. They are not secure. It doesn't matter which one it is. The only way to make a computer secure is to not plug it into any other computers. It's very Battlestar Galactica. As soon as you network it, it will be attacked. Right, so unless you have a brand new air-gapped system, sorry, by air-gapped I mean like a system that's never been connected to a network, a system that is physically and logically isolated from other computers. That's the only way to keep the data on that system secure. And really the only way to do that is to really, really, really format it, do whatever your task is, and then like physically destroy the drive. Right, that's really the only way to be secure about that. But that's going to be overkill for like 99,
most users,
bunch of nines or people. Yeah, but there are specific things where having an air-gapped system may be valuable, or where you have a VM or a throwaway system that you can do specific tasks on. I wouldn't recommend that for like your day-to-day Facebook surfing or checking your bank or things like that. But when you get that free device from a trade show and they give you a free USB drive that's got like a vendor logo on it, I might take that to my throwaway system and use my throwaway to format it and make sure it's free of any malware before I plug it into things that matter.
Yep.
So then for the average person, let's say they're running Windows 10, would you say just having a fairly robust and secure password and ensuring that disk encryption is turned on, even if they're using something like BitLocker, would probably be the way to go for your average user, not your advanced
I mean,
user,
yes,
right?
BitLocker is kind of a joke. If you're going to do encryption, I would use a real encryption product. My choice as of right now is VeraCrypt, which is a fork of the old Truecrypt product.
Yeah.
Yeah, Truecrypt, the Truecrypt product project died a couple years ago, but there's a very successful fork of that VeraCrypt that's running. It's basically the same thing. I would run VeraCrypt or some equivalent complete disk encryption technology, because again, anything on your computer can be accessed, and if you plug it into the internet, everything on your computer will be accessed. So by running full disk encryption, you are at least going to make it more difficult should someone physically have access to that machine. So BitLocker is, I mean, like a bare minimum.
Right, but so one of my concerns is, I mean, physical security in mind. If somebody were to break into my house and steal my laptop when it's powered off, and it were to have BitLocker encryption with a secure password, that average Joe burglar is not going to be able to get into that laptop. What they're going to end up doing is basically taking that hard drive out of that laptop, putting in, $100 SSD, and try to resell that laptop. They're not going to be able to gain access to it, right? So
I think it depends on how concerned you are about your data. Like if you have your prepper bug out USB key that has all of your family's copies of your electronic records, like if you have everybody's birth certificates and SIM cards and copies of health cards and all of that, like I would be a lot more concerned about that than like your regular like C drive with Windows on it and your games and things.
I do have that stuff, but it's encrypted with VeraCrypt using hidden volumes and so on. So again, for the average Joe,
plausible deniability.
For the average Joe, good luck. Is all I'm saying, right? So I do have that stuff, and there's absolutely nothing that's kept on the computers themselves. I've got a fairly secure NAS for that. I've got thumb drives as well, like I said, using VeraCrypt and all that kind of stuff.
For your average user, turn on all the built-in things in your OS that are going to make it more secure. So in Windows, that's going to be things like complex passwords and BitLocker, because that's sort of, in my mind, that's sort of a bare minimum. Like
it's better
without
than
adding things like, right, without going to learn how to install and use full disk encryption in a product like VeraCrypt, BitLocker is going to make it harder for someone who wants to gain access to that device to gain access. It's not going to stop it, but it's going to make it more of a pain in my ass.
Right. With BitLocker, I'd be concerned about state actors, but I'm not concerned about your average, somebody steals my laptop from a coffee shop type deal, right? So
yeah, that's probably going to...
I get that.
Yeah.
And I think Mac has a similar, right? They have a similar disk encryption utility.
Yeah.
Built-in disk encryption.
Right, thank you.
Yep. It's at File Vault 2 right now, and it's on by default if you've recently purchased a Mac. If you've got a Mac that's a couple years older, not on by default, but it's literally just in preferences, flipping over File Vault encryption, and then it just, as Mac likes to say, it just works.
And for the most part, gone are the days of this being software rendered encryption. A lot of it has, built-in hardware encryption, which means that it's really seamless to the user. It doesn't really affect the speed or overall performance of the system. So
yeah, you won't even notice it's on for most of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so go with that. Go with a complex password. Go with whatever level of encryption your OS allows.
So
Mac versus Windows is the same as like iOS versus Android. I'm not convinced that one is more secure than the other, but they just have different vectors of attack.
Me being average Joe, my laptop has, some pictures on it. It has a couple of important files that, I keep backed up on a couple of USB drives and one of them's in my safe and one of them's in my safe deposit box, and I've got everything backed up in Google Drive because it's easy to transfer files around. My biggest threat is more like the random somebody trying to find my bank account information. Is that probably a safe assessment?
That's it. So trying to find your bank information, trying to find your identity, anything they can use to pretend to be you is most likely what they're going after in your case. I don't think most would be interested in your family photos and such.
I think that's true for most people, and your big vector for that is going to be phishing attacks, emails posing as something else, password reset from msm.com as opposed to like msn.com. But like, because most people aren't going to catch small changes in long URLs or two letters next to one another that look similar, or an I in place of an L. So
we laugh, but these are
you're going to get
common and successful attacks.
Oh, very much so.
Well, that's what I mean. So you're going to get those kind of phishing attacks where some third party sends you a password. You need to reset your Hotmail password, but it's actually Hotmail with two I's.
Yep.
So you click on the link and it looks like a Hotmail link, and you type in your password, and now they have your password because you just had to enter your old one and then your two new ones. Well, they don't care about the new one and the verification one. They just wanted the original. So thanks for putting your so be wary of clicking links in email. I think in general, be wary of clicking things in email.
Yeah. Period. Yeah.
In general, email is not a safe and secure system, so you should be. I mean, I would prefer we use like paper letters, but that's probably not practical.
Because sometimes a letter will get across the province in 16 hours, and sometimes a letter will get across the province in 4 days. Yeah. So it really depends on your level of urgency, really, more than anything.
Yep.
Yeah, so in terms of email, I would be careful about phishing attempts, things that are masquerading as something that looks legitimate though it is not. Often redirects to other websites or redirects to URLs with spelling errors in them, although they are not actually errors. It's just an attacker that's trying to make you think you're going to a legitimate website, and it's not.
So
the other thing is that they can be.
I was just going to say, with everything, I mean, you can get fancy with email too. You can have, depending on who you're talking with, you can have PGP, you can have SMIME, you can have those levels of security added. Instead of using Gmail, you can use something like Proton Mail. But again, it's not, if somebody sends you a phishing email to your Proton Mail account and you click on it, it doesn't matter what service you're using at that point, right?
So to me, the key takeaway there is if you didn't request a password change, chances are good that it's a scam.
Yep.
Most places won't require you to change a password, even if it's auto expiring. It won't request you to change a password until you go to log in the next time.
Right.
So that's a big thing to remember. Like if a website is saying you need to reset your password, it's probably a scam.
Yeah. When in doubt, just open up a browser, type in the website address yourself, and go to it and try to log in. If you can't, you'll most likely get instructions that your password has to be reset or something has to happen, but you've put the address in yourself.
Yeah.
That way you're not relying on that link that could send you elsewhere without you even knowing it, using some various techniques. And the next thing you know, you're at a website you don't want to be at, and you're putting your credentials in, and now bad guys got all your stuff, and away they go.
And when it comes to that kind of stuff too, just make sure that, you're looking to, if you're using something like Chrome, look to the left of the address bar and make sure that you see a padlock and not like a not secure. There's extensions you can get for Chrome like HTTPS everywhere, which basically forces secure browsing at all the sites, right? So that's just another example of stuff that you can do.
Yeah, it's 2020. Use secure socket layer, SSL encryption. It's not very good encryption, but it is better than no encryption.
Yep. You don't want all your stuff out there in plain text. Terrible idea.
I'm with Hughes. I really like HTTPS everywhere as a plugin. Most modern browsers, Chrome and Firefox, both support different versions of HTTPS everywhere, which just force the URL auto-completion stuff to happen with the SSL enabled, which you should be using SSL because it's the current year.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm actually thinking about, now that you're talking about browsers, switching over to Firefox from Chrome, just because of the added security features that Firefox has come up with recently.
Firefox I think is one of the more secure browsers, certainly the most mainstream browser that is security conscious. There are more secure, but also more obscure browsers. So you'll see less support, fewer plugins, less themes, smaller user communities. So if you run into problems, it may be more difficult to figure out what broke. But Firefox is very large and very well supported by Mozilla.
Let's
So I would,
talk about VPNs for a minute. That's something that's pretty hot. You see ads for it all the time. And it's right. It used to be recommended for if you wanted to get around, not being able to access Netflix.com. And if you're going to be doing things like torrents so that your ISP wouldn't be able to packet shape what you're doing and basically throttle you. But there's a lot of advantages to it as well. But it's also not the be all end all of security, understanding who owns that VPN service that you're subscribing to, where the exit nodes are, and even things like, on the servers themselves. So they have hard drives, so they run the operating systems off CD-ROM, so they don't have logs. So those are all things to consider when you're looking at those services. And I don't know if you guys, obviously you guys would use them, but if there's any that you would recommend to the listeners, because if you search Google for VPN service, you're probably going to find 1,000 of them, right?
there are a lot.
Tons. And a lot of them just want to steal your data.
They do. So it definitely, if they offer it for free,
they're stealing your
for
data.
You. Yeah.
Right.
So automatically, let's not subscribe to free VPNs because they're not.
Yeah.
And then when you're considering a VPN provider, you want to find out whether or not they maintain logging and at what level. You want somebody that has no logging ever under any circumstances. And
100%.
there have been VPN providers recently in the last couple of months that have been outed for maintaining logs despite having publicly said for years that they don't. So there is some due diligence required by you as a consumer to go and do some Googling and find out if they're a reputable VPN vendor or not. There's also other considerations around VPN. The exit nodes, particularly what countries they're in or what data centers in what country they're in. Also, what level of encryption and what type of encryption they use. You have to use their utility. Can you use a product like OpenVPN and plug in your connection information? Do they have a limited number of seats? So are you paying for one seat that you can use, or are you paying for multiple devices to be used simultaneously? And there's a bunch of use cases around that. If I were going to pick one, I would recommend the one that I have been using for years, which is private internet access.
Yep.
PIA.
I think it's
Yeah.
I think it's like $50 a year US, $40 a year US. It's somewhere in that range, and I believe they allow for 3 simultaneous users, which is fine because I use my computer and my phone.
So you're good.
So more than adequate for my needs, and exit nodes all over the bloody place. A dozen in the US and a couple in different places in Canada and another dozen in different European countries. And I'm a big fan of private internet access. They also have a very, very large, well-documented support community. So you can do a lot of stuff with their services. If you don't want to use their proprietary utility, you can plug in all of your connection information into your own utility like OpenVPN or some other third-party tool, and you can use that connection to use your virtual private network to do the things that you want to do. I'm a big fan of looking at cat photos on the internet, but nobody else needs to know which cat photos I like, so they want to see they have to work for it.
Yep.
Is that another
when I was mentioning about VPNs, you have to be careful about like device fingerprinting, which is obviously something to consider. So understand that a VPN will not be 100% anonymous, but it's a step in the right direction, right? So,
well, and that's the thing it's going to make a specific threat vector work harder to attack you. It's not going to stop you from being attacked, and it's not going to stop you from being specifically attacked. If someone wants to get your data, they will find an attack vector to get your data. But this will reduce the chances of drive-bys, if you will. It's less of a general attack, sort of like phishing versus spear phishing. It's less likely that they're going to go to that much work for your stuff when they can do no work and get somebody else's, because they're just looking for data. They're not looking for your data, unless it's specifically about you. And in that case, we have other bigger problems that we need to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. To think of it as, you're sitting at like the local coffee shop, the Timmy's, the Starbucks or whatever, you're connected to their Wi-Fi, your VPN, all your information is encrypted to that VPN provider. the guy sitting a couple tables over from you because COVID and you got to be that distance now, isn't running a VPN at all and is sending all their information over that Wi-Fi hotspot. If they're just looking for information, they're going to go for the guy a couple tables over because they've most likely taken over the Wi-Fi hotspot already. They're aggregating all the data. They can't see yours. They take a lot of work to see yours, but the guy sitting a couple tables over from you, their information is just free flowing. So they're going to grab all that and ignore you. It's all about getting the information that's readily available and easy to access. Because like Andrew said earlier, programmers are lazy. Hackers tend to be lazy usually as well. They'll go after the easy target unless they're looking for something very specific. Then yeah, they're going to work harder for it. But
that's another thing I was going to say too. Is I mean, if you have an opportunity to not use free Wi-Fi when it comes to like McDonald's or Starbucks or anything, don't. If you have your own hotspot, whether it be on your phone or an actual device, use that. You're always going to be better off using your own internet than free Wi-Fi. If you can't and you have to use the public Wi-Fi, just make sure you've got some level of protection, i.e. a VPN. To Eric's point, it's just going to make your data that much harder to look at, and everyone around you is probably not going to be using a VPN, so their stuff is a lot easier to get to, right? So,
I agree with that. The other VPN that I might mention to you listeners to look at is Nord. They have a pretty solid reputation.
Yeah, they're pretty popular.
Those would be my
pretty
two sort of top choices. Yeah, Nord I think is a very reasonable. Private internet access suits me as someone who is more involved in this and likes to fiddle with things under the hood. So I like being able to tweak all the settings and change my encryption keys and my handshake policies. But that's not necessarily something everybody wants to mess with.
That's the one thing I noticed with Nord is they don't have that granularity when it comes to security of the things that you can change. But when it comes to speed, having that, I've got a gigabit connection. Nord is actually a lot closer to gigabit speeds when I'm connected versus PIA. But that's just preference. But with Nord as well, you can have a VPN over the Tor network on top of it to make things even a little bit more difficult.
Because I wanted to ask you guys about Tor.
I don't think we have enough time.
Well, let's say it's often confused with private VPNs, with virtual private networks.
Yeah.
Because it's
two totally different things.
Seems like it should be, but also it is definitely not.
Yeah.
It's not, but you can route your VPN through Tor.
Yes, you can route your VPN traffic through Tor, which is a whole, this is where we get into the under the hood bit. Tor is another one of those things that you should look into and see if it meets your needs. And this is like a caveat emptor kind of a thing, like buyer beware. Tor's free. But it's a free open source project. There's not a company behind it, although theoretically somebody could be gathering your data. So do you want to pass your data through this? The trade-off is that you're accepting somebody else's data back. So you could, in theory, do things with that if you wanted to and had the know-how, which if you do, you don't need me to describe how Tor works. For everyone else, you might want to go and look at Tor. It's the Onion Router, TOR, the Onion Router. And every user is also an endpoint for the network, and it basically just takes all of your traffic and flip-flops it around inside of the Onion Router network. So if Hughes and I are both using it, some of my traffic will go through Hughes' computer, and some of his traffic will come through mine, and there are hundreds of thousands of users like that, so it'll route it all over the place, and it makes it very difficult for an attacker to find out where specific traffic originated from. Doesn't make it impossible. It just makes it a lot more difficult. So
it sounds
another one of those things.
It sounds a whole lot like Napster. It just doesn't sound like it's going to go well.
It's very much a peer-to-peer type service. Like it's that same kind of distributed computing type thing.
Except Napster is a great way to give your computer AIDS for a few free songs, right? So
yeah,
guys,
Tor's not going to do anything weird.
After all of this, and we're almost an hour into this, I'm buying a typewriter. I'm reconnecting my landline, and that's about it. Like this is.
I'm with Uncle Ted. I'm going to get a cabinet and a typewriter, and I'm going to live in the woods.
Yeah, perfect. Because I have very little else to contribute to this conversation. I'm going to mention the security things that I know about, which includes keys. All of your car keys, by the way, are completely hackable. Any of your RFID cards, if you've got a prox card that gets you into your office, also entirely hackable. and copyable without any trace of it having been copied. So some of those car keys can actually be copied through a wall. So even if it's if your key is near enough to your outside wall, then it can be copied without, again, through a wall without anybody knowing it. They just get in your car and drive off. So just keep, things to keep in mind. It's maybe not a bad idea to keep your spare keys locked away in a metal box wherein they cannot be, or they're less likely to be,
like a Faraday cage,
or I was going to say, or a fire safe, but yes. A fire safe that happens to have a ground wire attached to it makes an excellent Faraday cage.
I've seen the attacks. Even they published some security video on YouTube of people walking up to a house and basically capturing that key code, and then within seconds starting a car. And it's like, listen, if you're going to go through that level of effort, you can just have the car, because I'll give you
my insurance is going to replace it, but it's more of an inconvenience than anything. So it is a thing. It's not a bad idea to do that. Especially within the prepper community, there are a lot of really popular pictures, such as doing pocket dumps. Do yourself a favor. Don't put a picture of your keys on the internet. It's really low. It's not necessarily cyber attack, but if I can get access to that picture, I can make a copy of that key. And I can get it. I'll get it right about 85% of the time on the first try, and within 3 tries, I'll have it the other 15%. Like it's really not hard. So just security by obscurity. If people aren't looking for your stuff and they don't have access to your stuff, then you're less likely to be a target.
What I want to say is, if you're going to post a picture of your keys, make sure you use like something like a Key Smart, where you're actually hiding the bidding on the key.
Yeah. Even the keyway, right? The bidding and the keyway are both important combinations. Just don't put pictures of that. I mean, again, it's about being as gray as possible. And I mean, you go back to the Gray Man episode that we did back, 30 episodes ago or so, right? Like if I know that you have if I know that you drive a Dodge or a Chrysler product because of the key that you have, then when it comes time to actually go make a copy of that key that I want to, it's one less thing I have to try and figure out at the time. And so it's a faster process because I already have that concept sorted out. So I just show up and I've already got those tools ready to go.
So I think with everything we talked, go ahead.
Yes.
I was going to say with everything we talk about, I think it's you have to look at it like, for my mindset, it's like PPGP, like pretty good security, right? Or that's PGS, I'm sorry, but like pretty good security, pretty good privacy. You have to strike a balance between being as secure as you can and being a usable system, right? Because if I need 3 different things in 3 different locations to access my bank account every time, that's going to be a pain in the butt, right? And not that I'm not going to do it as often, but so it's really trying to find a balance between the level of security that you need and the usability of things, right? I mean, I still have a Gmail account. I still have an Android device. I run Kali Linux on my laptops and all that kind of stuff. So it's finding that balance for what works for you. I think that's what it comes down to, right? So I mean, you could be really, really, really secure, but you won't be able to use anything readily, or you can be wide open and you're just going to get hacked nonstop.
And pay attention to what's changed in your life, so that you know that you have been attacked, right? There are a whole bunch of like free credit monitor, free or you are the subject of advertising as a result of a credit monitoring process. So you know if somebody's tried to open a new credit card in your name, and it'll give you an alert for that.
Yes, with one expansion, check in with your bank, because a number of Canadian banks have recently started offering credit checking services as a feature on some of their accounts. Depending on the tier and the bank. Scotiabank has it. I think CIBC has it.
CIBC does as well. Yep. And I believe RBC does as well.
So depending on your bank, and I believe it's based on the tier of service that you pay for, you may have access to that through your banking, which I would recommend far and away over using a free service.
Yep.
And the thing is I mean, it's they're offering this to protect themselves as well, right? Because if somebody were to credit, from credit out of your name, it affects your credit, affects the bank's bottom line as well. And a lot of what we have is unsecured credit. So And in the end, it's the banks that have to eat it. So it's a good service that they're offering.
And if you're curious, if you've been involved in one of those data breaches, you can go over to haveibeenpwned.com. That's PWNED. And it'll let you know if your email address has popped up in any of the data breaches or any of the documents that have been released.
And it will have.
100% it will have been.
If you've been on the internet for more than 5 minutes, it will have, because somebody has made a poor security choice at some point.
100%.
Again, programmers are lazy.
Yep. But it'll give you kind of an idea as to what sites you're using. And if you're using that same password still on that site that's listed, start changing your passwords, because inevitably somebody is going to run an attack on a site and try to get in. And so check that out for sure.
Please use unique passwords.
Yes.
Please.
If there's any takeaway from this episode, unique passwords for everything is key. It's going to make life so much more difficult for people to get into your accounts. And please change the passwords, your default passwords on all your Internet of Things, your security cameras, your routers, anything at your house that has shown up from a retail shop will come with a default username and password for login for administrative access. Please change that password.
You mean admin is not a secure,
or admin pass, or Netgear, or
root is usually not.
Root,
not.
terrible, terrible.
Talking about that just quickly, like for routers, you can take it a step further. I mean, you can hide the SSID. That's not the be all end all. You can have MAC address filtering as well. So you can filter what devices are allowed or not allowed on your network. You can take it that step further. And again, it comes down to the usability aspect. If a friend of mine comes over and wants to use my network, I've got a separate guest network that's in a DMZ that they can use. But I'm not going to give them access to my network because, one, the SSID is hidden and I'd have to unrestrict, or I'd have to allow their MAC address on my network and all that kind of stuff. So just think about the usability aspect of it, right? So
to counter that, if you hide the SSID, it's not necessarily hard to find it if you want to. But for the average guy driving by just looking for SSIDs, they're going to drive by. The war drivers are probably going to find it still, but it's an extra step, right?
And don't use the same email address for everything too.
Absolutely. That's another one.
Yeah, I'm bad for that. There's a couple of people that I work with that we have vendor specific email addresses, so we can tell if somebody has decided to sell our accounts to a third party. So if I start getting like Amazon@andrew.ca and I start getting emails from not Amazon, I know that they've been sharing my email with other parties. And so usually that results in a series of angry emails.
Give you guys a trick for that. So I have a separate Gmail mailbox for all my spam. So basically, anytime I sign up, if I'm at the store and they're like, what's your email address? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I give them the email address, and then it's basically plus the name of the store. So if you do let's say my email address was hughes@gmail.com, I would do Hughes plus Old Navy @gmail.com. And what that plus does is it creates a separate unique email address that goes into the same mailbox. So to Andrew's point, if I know that I'm getting a bunch of spam from Hughes plus Old Navy @gmail.com, I know that Old Navy leaked my email address or Old Navy sold my email address. So it's just a good idea to have that as well.
Good idea. Antivirus, if you want to install it and make yourself feel all warm and fuzzy, sure. Yeah,
is it really needed these days? Is it? I mean,
some protection is probably better than no protection, because you're still going to get a bunch of I was on the internet and for some reason I now have this pop-up that won't go away, and this woman on my desktop keeps flashing me.
I fail to see the problem.
How do I get that? I'll pay extra for that.
That was probably 15 years ago, but I used to work as a tech fixing computers, and we would have machines come in all the time, and I don't know why this thing keeps telling me to go to this website. Then she walks across the screen and takes her top off.
Yep.
And you're real upset about that too. It'll be $140 though. Thanks.
I'm more upset about the bill than they are about what was happening.
The best idea are the ones that would come in and have literally 17 search bars in Internet Explorer. Yep. And it would take me, 2 hours to just unroot all of these search bars. Oftentimes I just tell the customer, listen, I'm just going to back up your stuff, wipe your hard drive
again.
We're just going
to, it's going to be
start again.
Yep.
And they're back next month.
Better.
Same thing.
Yeah. My search bar and all these.
I wasted many hours of tech doing the exact same thing.
I did.
Well, I mean, that's the nature of the work. Although things seem to have matured with the current version of Windows, and that was never as big of a deal with the Mac OSs. It was just fewer users, not as profitable, less of a vector of attack. So if you're going to connect it to the internet, it's probably worth putting an antivirus and keeping it up to date. It's also probably worth having at least a software firewall, even if it's the built-in one in Windows turned on, because it's at least going to cut down on the noise attacks, like the general broadcast, like hey, are you listening? Oh, you are? Cool. Let me send you some traffic.
See what happens.
Right. So like at least you're cutting down on the very generalized attacks.
Yeah.
It's still not going to stop specific threat vectors. So if somebody is targeting you, the antivirus firewall, none of that's going to affect that. I have much more invasive means of attack.
The other thing too, I think is, sorry, you go ahead, Andrew.
I just turn on the basics so that we're at least in a less exposed position.
I was going to say, in terms of networking as well, a lot of ISPs like Bell and Eastlink here on the East Coast, they offer obviously routers built into the modem and wireless access points built into the modem. Don't do that. And if you can, skip out on the $40 D-Link router from Best Buy. If you're going to get a little bit serious about your home networking gear, look at the Unify gear, something like a Dream Machine, which is more for the home users, or a Dream Machine Pro, which is stepping up the game a little bit. These routers cost anywhere from $400 to $500, but it's very, very nice equipment, and it's in terms of firewalls, you really can't beat it, at least for what's on the consumer market, right? This is more like a prosumer type gear.
I can't confirm or deny running Unify.
I also have Unify equipment and cannot recommend them highly enough, but I feel like it's a step beyond your average consumer. I feel like it's even a step beyond most of your prosumers. Like that's somebody who likes to tinker with this stuff and have high-end gear, because it's like talking to a car guy, right? Like he likes to have a nice car and he likes to work on his car. Talking to a network guy and you start talking about the Ubiquity products, and it's like, well, that's a guy who likes to build networks and likes to play with stuff and wants to tweak this. So he doesn't mind having a $500 firewall.
No.
But your mom who wants to check her Facebook account, probably not going to need that.
Be fun to set it up for her, though.
Oh, yeah. If you could talk her into it, sure. But I feel like a lot of people, that's going to be far and away the level of effort that they're going to put into it.
And we do have a good question here in the live chat from Josh. Just in regards to concerns with smart TVs being connected to the internet, is there any way to secure them? Great question.
Don't connect them to the internet.
Was in the kitchen the other day. Told my wife a joke. She laughed. I laughed. The toaster laughed. I shot the toaster.
Yep. Yeah, the smart TVs are tricky.
IoT. I mean, just smart TVs, Google Nest products, Amazon Alexa products, your phone. I mean, it's connected to the internet and it's listening to you or watching you.
Yep.
Or it's connected to a thing where there's somebody that can be watching you. Hi, CSIS. Looking at you guys.
Yeah.
Well, it's like we bought a Samsung washer and dryer 2 years ago. And it, the first thing that popped up was the washer wanted to connect to the internet. No, I don't think so.
No,
that
thing's
nothing
never
you can
getting
tell me
security
that
updates. That thing's never getting patched. No.
Wide open.
No. Yeah. Not happening.
So I mean, smart TVs I think are not particularly scary, although they are definitely a vector of attack. There's been a number of smart TVs that have been exposed as being reasonably easy to access their sound and video systems remotely. Just, again, sort of that broad general attack. Go out on the internet and send a message and see what answers, and then start sending it traffic and see what it does. And there's a number of TVs in the last couple of years that have had problems with that because, again, like Eric said, the vendors are not very good at keeping on top of security patching and not very good at pushing patches, or relies on the consumer to apply the patches.
Yep.
So maybe the vendor's putting them out, but they're not auto-updating.
Nobody's listening.
Right? So I don't know that smart TVs are particularly scary, because if you have a Google Home Mini, it listens to you all the time, and it's just as easy for an interested third party to access as your smart TV is. So I don't know that it's.
My Samsung listens to me. There's no question about it. We'll talk about something, and I'll start getting ads for it. Like we'll talk like amongst ourselves, sitting on the deck drinking beers, and start getting ads. We'll all start getting ads for it afterwards. Like there's no question, your electronics are listening to you.
Yeah,
plain and simple.
Well, and I think there's a difference between if my phone, for example, that's running Facebook is listening to me, and now I get a targeted ad for my next vacation because I was just talking to my wife about going on vacation. There's a difference between that and an interested malicious third party that wants to listen to my conversation because I might say something incriminating or revealing.
Yep, huge difference in the two.
Right, and part of that, I think there's the trade-off that as a consumer, you accept that these devices are going to be eavesdropping on you. I think eavesdropping is the best way to describe it. But an interested third party that wanted to have access to this to see your living room, or we had this problem, again, this is probably going back 2 or 3 years, and I think it was VTech, but it might have been another brand. I think it was VTech. Baby monitors are super easy to access. So, because everything, all baby monitors basically use admin. Admin is like an internet password, so you can just log into any baby monitor you want, and then you can like creepily watch children sleeping or playing in their nursery or so on and so forth, and pipe that video all over the world if you feel so inclined. And there were a lot of problems a couple of years ago with that sort of technology, and it's not vastly different than your smart TV problem that we started this on. Any of those devices, really any device, is not going to be that difficult to access if somebody feels motivated enough. And there are groups of people who break into these for fun and then post the instructions on the internet because it's a hobby just like Locksport is.
Or if you want a search engine similar to Google for all the connected devices that are accessible, just check out Shodan. They're all there. Creepy.
Yeah.
But you can watch some guy's living room if you want.
And some people are probably okay with that, but other people might not be.
So I don't want anybody looking in my living room.
Question similar to a VPN. Is there anything that I could plug in kind of between my Wi-Fi router and my internet access, whatever it may be, that would protect everything that's connected to my Wi-Fi? Is that a thing?
Very aggressive firewall.
Yeah. Yeah, you're getting into some technical setups for sure there.
But it's possible. But I mean,
for
simplicity's sake, if you don't want people to do it, don't have internet connected devices in your home. But I mean, you also have the Pocket Spy, your mobile phone. Yep. So you probably already have an internet connected device with you everywhere you go anyway.
Absolutely.
And it's already listening to you. And there may be some, let's call them third-party actors. They might be non-state actors. They might be state actors. Who knows? Who are already monitoring or surveilling you in some way through those devices, whether it's surreptitiously sending you advertisements or waiting for you to reveal your plans for world domination.
Yeah, I think world domination is just really aggressive. Like, why do I need to control the whole world? Like, just one little part of it would be fine.
Just aim high.
and I feel like based on some of the podcasts that I've been on and some of the things that I listen to, I'm on enough lists that's probably accurate. People are listening.
Basically, with your electronic devices, just always assume that somebody's listening and take steps to try to circumvent it. Right?
Yeah, it just depends on how radical you want to be. Because, I mean, some people might look to Uncle Ted and go live in the woods with a typewriter and write a series of novels. Other people might not want to do that. There's a balance to be had there somewhere.
Yeah, it's an interesting balancing act when it comes to electronics and privacy. Is in order to use them, you have to put information in, but at the same time, that information, once it's out there, is out there. So it's a fine balancing act on how you contain that information, how you allow it to leave, where you let it go to, and how it's dealt with, and who has access to it. And sometimes you can't control it. Once it's out there, and you just got to cross your fingers and hope it doesn't fall into nefarious hands. But there's times where it does, and it's an interesting world.
This is sort of the problem with all electronic communication, all computer systems, whether it's your phone or a physical computer or your new 72-inch smart TV curved screen doodad from Best Buy. You want to use it. They want to sell you another one, or they want to sell somebody else your information, so you buy another, whatever the next product is. So you just bought a TV, maybe you need a new dishwasher, or maybe, maybe the people that make the TikTok videos want to give your information to the Chinese Communist Party. These are also possibilities. So it's a trade-off with what you're going to accept as a consumer, because there are ways to get around most of this and still use computers, but it requires you to make more of a full-time job of how do you use a computer without revealing any personal information. It can be done.
Absolutely.
But it's a real big pain
Seems
in
like
the
a
ass.
lot of work.
Yeah.
It
a lot
is
of things to remember.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it's a lot of knowledge and understanding how they work, or it's a lot of having trust in somebody that tells you they know how, that might not necessarily know, and then your information is still leaked. So it boils down to a balancing act and researching and then coming up with a plan as far as what you're comfortable with doing and understanding the repercussions of what can happen with the information you put out there.
There you go.
Yeah. So maybe we'll just do a quick wrap up, because that's a lot of information thrown out. For those trying to just get into this and trying to kind of navigate through some ways that they can secure themselves a little bit more online, check out VPNs, PIA or Nord. It's going to be a good starting point for you as far as securing your connection when you're out and about, coffee shop, hotels, at home. Check out two-factor authentication or 2FA. Come up with a device like a YubiKey or something and start enabling that on your individual accounts online. And look at all your accounts and change your passwords. Don't use the same password on every account. So your login for Facebook is different for your password for Google. It's different for your password for Amazon. Is it a pain to do that and set it up initially? Absolutely. Are you going to be smashing your head against the desk for the first couple of weeks that you've done that because you've forgotten what the password is for Amazon or Facebook? Most likely. But that's where a password manager comes into play. So we've listed off a couple. They'll help in managing the passwords and saving and storing the different passwords for your different access accounts. Pick one that you are comfortable with, but keep in mind that that master password that you use to access them is going to be your weak point. So if somebody breaks into that, then they have access to all of your passwords and all of your logins. So that's where you build in your two-factor authentication for those accounts and for your password manager. But the big take home here, if you are a target for whatever reason and somebody wants to get your information and they're determined to do it, they're going to get it. It's just a matter of time. It might be that 400 years that Andrew said earlier about password cracking. It might be the next couple of days. It might be a couple of years. But if they've targeted you for some unknown reason, they're going to gain access. But the number one way that they're going to gain access is through physical hands-on of the actual devices that you have. So keep those close to you, lock and key. People that you don't know should not have access to them, period. Because it doesn't take much to throw something on there that'll start grabbing your information and sending it back to their systems, and then they have access to all your stuff. So I think that's a pretty quick recap of everything we talked about. Did I miss anything, guys?
Buy a typewriter, live in the woods.
Make sure nobody steals the tape for the typewriter.
Yeah. Burn the tapes when they're done.
Yeah.
Keep your typewriter locked up too.
Keep a shredder beside your typewriter so you can type everything out and then shred it.
Yeah. Burn after reading.
Perfect.
How will anyone read my memoir? What would Uncle Ted say?
That's a good question.
Something to do with a Wango Tango and shotgun a beer, kill a badger. I don't know.
All right. Well, let's move into the podcast challenge then, shall we?
Re-listen to this episode 17 times until you actually understand all of it.
Line up all the ones and zeros, and then it will make sense. But for the challenge, look over all of your online accounts. If they support two-factor authentication or 2FA, enable it. Come up with a way to utilize that two-factor authentication. Like we've mentioned in the podcast, using text message or using email as your 2FA is probably not the wisest choice, but balance that with how probable you believe a threat vector is going to be against you, and then select the appropriate two-factor authentication. and then change all of your passwords to separate passwords, which is going to be most likely a huge pain to do. But once it's done, if one account is breached, your other accounts are technically still safe, but at least all the passwords are different. So you're going to make it trickier for an attacker. So look over your online accounts, set up two-factor authentication, change all your passwords. We'll see you in about 17 episodes.
It's a lot.
That's
Podcast
a lot of
challenge
work.
complete.
It's a lot of work, but if you start at it and just do a couple a day, you'll eventually get through it, and then you'll be a little more secure for it. So, upcoming events.
We have TechCom 2020, which is now going to be taking place in 2021 for security because no one suspects TechCom 2020 to happen in 2021. You can see the details and get tickets for the show at the link in our show notes. Give them a reason to have the event. Go buy your tickets.
Right, and we've got attend a Maple Seed event. So if you check out mapleseedrifleman.com, and there's a link in the show notes as well. If you're wondering what the heck is that, there's a YouTube video there for you, so you can check that out. So we'll move to some shout outs. So I see anybody else have one, or is it just me tonight?
I think it's just you.
All right. So just a quick shout out to all the listeners that have either gone through our Amazon link or signed up to be a Patreon. You're helping keep the show going, having the generator fueled and the lights going. So far, we've raised $30 through Amazon links. Pretty good considering we just mentioned them last episode. And we're up to $17 a month for Patreon. So appreciate that. Costs about $400 or so a year to run this. So a little bit here and there helps out quite a bit. So thanks a lot to everybody. Yeah, buy the t-shirts. All right, we will move into some email and iTunes reviews then.
Looks like we got a few this year.
We've got a couple. So we've got one from Grumpy Prepper, and this is via Apple Podcasts in the United States. So it says, despite their glaring Canadiosity, these guys put on a great podcast, fun and informative. It's moved into my top 3 prep casts. Well, appreciate that.
Despite the glaring Canadianosity, or because of the glaring Canadianosity? Wow, that's a hard word to say. I didn't think it was going to be that
Take off.
Yeah. Yeah, hoser.
Yeah, jeez. We've got another one from Joey's Girl 1981. This was from Apple Podcast Canada, and it says, I enjoy listening in large because it's Canadian. All the hosts are knowledgeable and live the lifestyle. I like the added touch of news updates and the accountability of living the lifestyle of sharing what they've done for preparedness. So appreciate that. Thanks for the review.
Now, is there any chance that Joey's Girl 1981 is in anywhere related to Jesse's Girl 1977?
Perhaps.
Younger sister.
Maybe.
And as far as emails go, I can confirm that the inbox is working. We have had multiple emails from listeners because we put out there last episode that we're looking for some topic ideas. So we've had some roll in. So appreciate it and keep them coming in because we were adding it to our list of topic ideas. So appreciate all the brainstorming from the listeners.
We do appreciate that. Makes our job a whole lot easier.
And
worthwhile. I mean, it's great to know that we're not just talking amongst ourselves.
Yeah, we can come up with ideas all day long, but we don't always know that it's what people want to hear. So if you send the ideas in, at least we know one person wants to hear it, and chances are that means multiple people want to hear it. So.
Theoretically.
Yeah. And we had a message in the Facebook inbox as well from Josh. It just says, hey guys, love the podcast. I listen to you guys as I weld the day away. I hope to buy my first house and really start prepping. The last episode on solar power was great and very informative and changed my perspective on solar for the better. You've been asking for show ideas, and I think I have a few for you free of charge. So appreciate that because then he went on to list a whole bunch of ideas. So I didn't charge a dime for them. So
thanks, Josh. We love you too.
Yeah, so appreciate it. So lots of good feedback. So that always makes things fun as well. We know people are listening and they're getting something out of the show. So appreciate that. And with that, I will bring episode number 83 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or of course your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Submit a review. It helps other people find us.
We do record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. If you'd like an early peek at the show, hit up our YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click the notifications tab. It gives you an alert when we're going live. If you want to find me directly, I'm on Instagram at PPSWO. Every once in a while, I post things that I'm doing there, or by email, alan@prepperpodcast.ca, although I will admit that I've not checked that email recently since the password that Eric set up for that is like 37 characters long. I can't remember it. I had it written down somewhere. It no longer exists, so I've had to go to the admin and have it reset. And yeah, that's another topic entirely.
That's where LastPass comes into play.
There we go. So that's how you can reach us or reach me.
For myself, I can be reached at hfxprepper@gmail.com. I also have my own YouTube channel. Just search for HFX Prepper. And yes, I promise I will get more videos up soon. Promise.
Andrew, where can everybody find you?
If you've enjoyed listening to me, you can do more of that. 257 episodes deep at Canadian Patriot Podcast. I've been on at least 250 of those.
Impressive.
Kind of my show. It's important that I'm there. We're usually live Mondays and Wednesdays on the YouTube, but you can find us anywhere that fine podcasts are distilled for your listening enjoyment.
All right. And you can check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. You can get me there on the live chat while you're buying some prepper gear. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. So thanks for joining us this evening. And until next time, be prepared, stay safe.
Keep learning.